In three, two, one.
Recording in progress.
I started recording when you said 3, 2, 1 the first time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pod Damn South America, huh? This week, we're talking about the Pink Tide, the part 2 that may be happening right now. But before we get into that, hello, I'm Jake Flores. Alex Patak is here.
What's up, what the fuckers? It's another episode of Newsweek.
Anders Lee is here.
Anders Lee here.
What the fuck?
From the West Coast. West Coast Anders.
Anders, how's the weather out there?
It's, surprisingly cool. I thought it was going to be a scorcher, but it's honestly just better than... The East Coast is like... all the places I've lived, it's just blazing hot in the summer, and I assume California would be that way. But it's just nice.
California Anders.
I'm pretty disappointed in the wardrobe change for California Anders. He looks very similar to East Coast Anders so far. Are you saying mahalo or doing anything different?
Underneath this, I'm wearing a puka shell necklace and a tank top, and a thong. They wear those,
Dream
right?
on California Anders.
Anders Lee here, Anders Lee here, California.
There you go. And he's
all right.
But it should be California, Anders Lee here. But whatever.
Whatever.
One thing I discovered is we went to candy store in Malibu, California.
Uh-huh.
And the beaches there are like, there are all these nice houses, right? And then there's a beach. But in theory it's a public beach, but there's a property line though that you cannot cross or you'll be shot or arrested or bit by a dog.
Very California.
Right. The only place you can go is directly on the beach. There's like 1 square foot that's not like the water and someone else's yard that you're trespassing in. That's how they set up Malibu, so people don't come and hang out at the beach. But we did it anyway, and we got some candy, some vegan chocolate, and I got a caramel chocolate, a little crunch there, a little salty, goes very well. And then I was eating it after going to the beach, and it tasted extra crunchy. I realized there's some sand in the chocolate. However,
God.
It made it a much better experience than it would have been.
So you like it?
I like the sand in the chocolate. It's good. It's not.
What you're saying at the beginning of our Pink Tide episode is you enjoy eating sand, and wish sand was in more food.
Yeah, it's like a chocolate with. Everybody loves the sea salt on chocolate and the caramel crunch, and it's nice to be consuming chocolate with a bit of a crunch.
Cut out the middleman. Put some
Right.
glass
You're
in there.
paying too much for crunch.
Yeah, it adds even more crunch. It's you can consume a lot of sand and not get sick or anything. It's sand.
I don't think that's true.
This
takes
is
a
a
lot
wildly
to not to-
irresponsible thing to be saying into a microphone to a bunch of people, but all right, sure. Listen, you
Don't
impressionable
overdo it. Don't
children,
coat it.
eat some
don't coat it
fucking
in
sand.
A little sprinkle of sand that gets in your chocolate. If you barely even notice it, it's a good addition.
I do not like
Right?
California Anders. I'm drawing the line here. You need to come
Right.
back home.
He promotes dangerous ideas.
This is
That's the
messed up.
California mindset, baby.
Yeah, everything's just fucking cool, isn't it, bruh? I don't think it is at all.
Everything's copacetic to you. Isn't that
YOLO.
right, Kimo Sabi?
All I'm saying is YOLO.
Yeah, you
That's-
are.
That's a California thing, right?
You do
I'm
only
also
live
in 2012.
once. That's why you.
Well, I mean, the time is that's the time change.
That's right. They're 9 years behind us in California.
That's right.
It's very far away. So we have this great guest on, and we're going to talk about all the different Latin American countries and what's going on. Is there a new wave of socialism happening? akin to the turn of the 90s, akin to the oven of neoliberalism making delicious cookies by accident. But the one part I could have talked about for another full hour is just more about the indigenous lefty comedian circle in
Yes.
Peru. I had so many more questions. Are they doing sketches? I do not understand what they're doing.
I saw a picture and it looks very much like the clown stuff that we talked about a long time ago with like
Right.
in Mexico. Like they're still they're still doing vaudeville shit in a lot of ways in Latin comedy, I think.
Right.
You know, there's like proper stand up in Mexico City though. It's real big right now.
Yeah, they have
Right,
some of it on Netflix.
Yeah, it's like becoming a thing, but it's like it's weird because it's a step out of like if you're a stand-up comedian right now, I bet in like the young hip scene in like Mexico City, you're probably really into like Marin or something like that, and then like the
Maron.
Maron, the
Everyone makes the same joke at once.
but the generation like the generation of older comics that hangs out like and kind of like gatekeeps and talks shit is literally clowns. Like we're in the break from clowning to just stand up or whatever. So it's just a bunch of
that's a big problem because you're gonna get Louis C.K. clowns.
Yeah.
They're like very physically jacking off in front of people against their will.
And they're like, you know, everyone is trying to cancel me. The clown. They cannot handle when I honk my horn.
If you've seen a man expose himself on a tiny tricycle, it's really something you never recover from.
Well, it's interesting because as we'll discuss with Ollie in Peru, these sort of clowns, vaudevillian comedians are looked down on by at least, you know, I don't know about most of the population, but like urban people. But in Mexico, I don't know if it's totally the same thing, but or totally different. But what's the guy's name who we did the episode on? That clown.
Broso el payaso tenebroso.
Right.
Broso the scary clown.
I've talked to friends of mine who are from Mexico, and they say he's like the most respected person in the country. Like,
they say he's the Jon Stewart of Mexico.
Right. Yeah. Like he goes after everybody. He's not, you know, he's just looking out for the interests of the people.
He can walk a tightrope of political scorn.
That's right.
You throw a pie in the face of hypocrisy and mediocrity. Man.
Yeah.
We got to bring back clowns. Well, I guess we have one. Anders clown, California clown here.
And all these ones on Capitol Hill. Am I right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Is that okay to say?
How about
Is that too far?
Clownifornia? It's an entire West Coast state full of clowns that are all douchebags from the beach. Okay.
Yeah. So my clown instructor in France, when I made my pilgrimage over there to learn clowning in Top France. I asked him because people always say Trump's a clown and he's very funny.
You're like, he's not a clown.
Right, yeah, I asked him that. I was like, is my president, is he a clown? If so, is he a good clown or would he be a bad clown?
Is he a form of clown?
Yeah, and it took like 5 minutes to be like,
what an idiotic question. Such a stupid question.
Oh, man.
And then he was like,
You're not a clown. There is nothing beautiful.
I hate when I ask a question and get that response. It really hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Because you have to be beautiful to be a clown. You have to be a beautiful idiot. And Trump is just an idiot. He's an ugly, mean-spirited person.
Clowning is about intention, right? Like if Trump was doing this all on purpose, okay, he's a Sacha Baron Cohen genius, right? But he's just an idiot, not beautiful.
He's in the same way Mr. Magoo is not a clown.
Yeah, but there is a distinction between clown and, not to get too in the weeds here, bouffon, which is like a more adversarial sort of, like you're being a dick. And so Trump, I think, would be a bouffon.
He's a bouffon. Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's good to get these terms out of the way.
Okay, yeah.
Bolsonaro would be a absolute. Well, no, you know what? Bolsonaro is a clown. I don't think he's smart enough to be a bouffon, right? Trump is at least cunning. I don't know. Maybe I would have to.
It feels weird drawing distinctions there.
Yeah.
I feel like they're really on the same team.
They're pretty similar guys, I think. They both seem like dumbasses.
Yeah.
And kind of cunning. But let's have to move on from clowns. What are we talking about today? I guess because assume someone listening to the podcast does not know Pink Tide. We have to explain it before we go into an in-depth interview about it. So, what was the first Pink Tide?
Okay, so in the 90s and early aughts, right, there is a wave of left-wing political change in Central and South America. And we see that in the form of Venezuela. Hugo Chavez took power. We got a good list up here somewhere.
Argentina, the Kirchners.
Argentina.
They had a couple going at it, like the anti-Clintons, basically.
Evo Morales, I believe, counts as part of the Pink Tide, right?
Yes. Some dispute as to whether or not our boy Lula da Silva counts, because I believe the distinction Rene Rojas made was that there wasn't strong of a social movement or something like that. There was not like a protest as massive as a protest movement as in like Venezuela. But I think to zoom out a little bit more than that for non-academic purposes, I think we could count Lula as part of the left in that
friend of
era.
the show.
Yeah.
There's like a general Latin American tendency towards electing left-wing leaders kind of in reaction to all the imposed neoliberal shit from the 70s and 80s and shit like that.
Right.
Yeah, and so you have all these countries moving away from austerity and these market policy like formations in government. And if you Google like Pink Tide, it's just New York Times people rejoicing that the tide has ebbed and all of these countries went back to neutral. But as I think our guest points out, in this show, the winds of political change are always moving, and formations like that can happen. So what we're looking at now is a new wave of like left-turn momentum in Southern Hemisphere, and we're like, I'll have some of that. And so that's what this episode's
turn.
about.
I like that.
Yeah.
Left turn.
Okay. And
Left
it's
turn.
now coming after like things like the Janine Áñez coup in Bolivia and stuff like that, and the thing where Lula got thrown in jail and stuff. There's like a new... The pendulum is swinging, maybe, is a broad stroke.
Sand has gotten into the chocolate in South America and yielded a new flavor we are all going to enjoy.
Got it.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, like, this was during sort of the neoliberal era. They managed to pull this off in several countries, and they nationalized a lot of commodities, a lot of natural resources, and they did very well for themselves when the resources were selling and the prices, I think, were up. And then once they went down over the past few years, the governments were not as popular because they couldn't invest as much. And so there was some turning against them, and they've elected right-wing governments. But as we soon learn, a right-wing government is not really going to bring the economy back for anybody but a small sliver of the population. So I think
such is
some of this,
the difficulties of navigating international capital.
Right. Yeah, they've been in some ways hopefully delegitimized, and hopefully there will be a return to a more socialist politics, and economically socialist, to make a distinction with Grimes, who is a socialist but not an economic socialist. Do you see this?
Yes.
Is that her new thing?
Yeah, she's a
She
socialist
posted a
but not
Berserk
economically.
page.
She's a
Which made her
socialist.
Yeah. But we're
She
getting
likes
some real...
robots.
She's just saying she's a...
Yeah.
she a hoe.
Right. But who else is a hoe? Bolsonaro, who is coming out, hopefully, of power next year.
He is a hoe.
Sort of a buffon.
Battle. That's right. And then we got some changes happening, as we're going to discuss, in Peru, Chile, elsewhere. Hopefully Peru. Definitely Chile. And definitely Bolivia.
Okay.
All right.
I think we have painted a picture. I can see it.
Of pink. Yes.
I can see a big pink picture of Latin America and various forces in conflict with each other, but emerging. The pink something pink in the water, almost like sand in a chocolate. And it's not blood, but it's blood of the ruling class.
It's blood of a guy you don't like.
There you go. It's good that it's blood. And there's a shark.
It's good that it's blood.
There's a glorious, the people's shark is swimming around, and he's gonna jump out of the water and over a barrier like Free Willy, but it's the shark from Jaws who is the people's shark.
Oh, I was gonna say, is it not the shark from Harley Quinn?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
The Ron Funches shark? No, that shark blocked me on Twitter, so it's not that shark. That shark blocked me on Twitter.
Well,
for being mean to
shark
Roseanne.
Blocked me on Twitter, so.
Okay, well, I don't think we could frame it any better than that. It's the people's shark. It's time to cut to our interview with the very intelligent, always relevant Ollie Vargas. Cut to the tape.
Cut to the tape.
Lock them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
All right, we are here live with the one and only reporter, public intellectual, journalist at large, Ollie Vargas. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, guys, for having me on.
Yeah.
Of course. So this is kind of just this is some vegetables for the audience today. We want to learn. We want to learn about the world at large. What's going on in the many coasts that these God-given lands have offered us, and especially about the elections happening in South America right now. What's going on in who are the countries to watch? Who's got elections coming up?
Well, yeah, there's so on Sunday, in like a couple of days, there's going to be presidential elections in Peru, and it's quite interesting. Peru is the sort of country that has never had a kind of progressive government in the way that other countries, their neighbors, have had. And for the first time, a guy's come out, sort of his name's Pedro Castillo.
Mm-hmm.
His party is called Peru Libre, which is identifies itself as a Marxist-Leninist party. And he's basically managed to group together all of the provinces to surround the capital city and to outvote them, basically. And that's what he's planning to do. In the rural areas, he's on about 72% of the vote. And he loses in the biggest city. So there's this big sort of cultural clash between the provinces and the sort of metropolitan elites, which is really interesting. And it's producing some quite interesting sort of reactions from the sorts of people that are worried about what's going on. Very similar to what happened in Bolivia last year, because the kind of demographics of it all is quite interesting. As I said, Pedro Castillo's voters of the left in Peru are primarily, overwhelmingly rural, indigenous, working class, whereas the people who are voting for the right, for Keiko Fujimori, she's the daughter of the ex-dictator Alberto Fujimori, they're concentrated, almost all of them, in the capital city, Lima. And so now they're kind of freaking out. They're like, oh no, like the peasants are surrounding us, like what are we going to do? They feel kind of trapped at this point. And they're people who don't understand each other, essentially. And when people from the countryside, from rural areas of Peru go to live in Lima, migrate there because of poverty, where they come from, these people in the cities, they don't recognize. They're like, oh, they're invaders, they're immigrants, even though it's their own country.
Yeah.
That's how they that's how they regard the rest of the country. So there's some really interesting dynamics. I think a lot of the usual suspects are also quite worried. Like the US media is quite worried about what's going on, because Pedro Castillo, his proposals are the nationalization of natural resources, are a constituent assembly to draw up a new constitution, so it's completely throw out the old sort of neoliberal constitution and create a new one. So all of that is structural changes, and yeah, I think it's something to keep an eye on. They go to vote on Sunday in a couple of days now, so we'll see if he's able to go over the line.
Well, it's funny that it feels like this kind of took everybody by surprise, like the left in some ways, but also especially the mainstream media here in the United States didn't even have a picture for Castillo on CNN when he won the first round, or when he came in enough to continue to the second round of the runoff. And as you mentioned, there seems to be this cultural divide. And I saw you tweeted recently about some comedians in Peru who have been out and about supporting Castillo, but are disdained by sort of those urban elites, if you will, you were talking about. Who are those people? What's their comedy like?
This is what I want to hear about. This is
I also want to ask
industry breakdown.
Yeah, what's the Peruvian scene like? Do they have good mics? Who do I talk to? How do I get that? And also wanted to ask, what's with the pencil? I see Castillo all the time going around with a big pencil. What is that?
Yeah, it's the pencil of the people. They're going to write a new constitution with it.
Oh my gosh, you can do anything with.
But
it's like the math pen.
Yeah, but I think it also speaks to that cultural divide because this movement is overwhelmingly, working class, rural. It doesn't have a lot of support even among the sort of progressive circles and more middle class or university, maybe urban areas. And the pencil is something that those sorts of people don't even use in their lives anymore. A lot of people just
that's cool. That's a good bit.
Laptops, whatever. But actually, in Peru, that's not the majority. Those people are the minority. So those pencils come in as this is one of us. This is the stuff that we use. Yeah.
I would even type it if possible.
Yeah, let's not get carried away. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's so the campaign is over now. They had their last rally yesterday, and it was one of the stars at the rally was this comedian called El Cholo Juanito, and I actually
symbol,
thought he was
but you should
Bolivian
write the Constitution in pen because
really
otherwise
popular in Bolivia.
The next guy running is the guy comes after him, the eraser. He's like, I'm the eraser.
He has a kind of comedy act duo with his partner, a guy called Richard Douglas. And Cholo Juanito is indigenous, and his friend Richard Douglas is not. And they have this sort of thing where they kind of, sort of make fun of each other on every show. Him talking about, oh, you're so white, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy's like, oh, you're so backwards. But then the end of the show is always the indigenous guy that outsmarts the other one, even though he seems it's the other way around. And it's stuff that is, they always play in the street, but they're really big. They're on TV. They're celebrities. They're very, very big celebrities, but they're only watched, enjoyed by people like them, working class, rural, indigenous people. People in the cities just think it's really embarrassing and why they like that, and it goes along with the music as well. So part of their comedy act is music, and they play the sorts of music that people listen to in rural areas, etc. And that if you were to play that music in a social setting in the capital city, which is Lima, you'd get laughed at. You'd be like, oh, this is the Indians' music, it's Cholo music, blah blah. So it's kind of like a cultural component of this political movement, of the majority of ordinary people coming into politics on their own terms, with their own culture, and saying if you don't like it, we don't care. There's more of us, so that's how we're going to go. That's how we're going to proceed.
The people in the cities think it's cringe.
Yeah, it is cringe. Yeah.
Right. They want to hear like Interpol and the latest comedy stylings of Carlos Mencia. I don't know, some international
Probably
stand
like
up.
those Mexicans that are on like US channels and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
They seem boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's interesting because from like sort of the U.S. northern perspective, Pedro Castillo is like somewhat of what we might probably call here like a social conservative, like is a little
It's interesting. 'Cause
probably not
historically,
someone
like,
we
it's
would
kind
agree
of
with
the other
on
way around
abortion
with,
or gay
like,
rights and stuff. But has
communist
that
shit,
shifted
where, like,
since the first
oh, it's
round?
only
Because
the
I
urban
know
intellectuals
there
and
were
the
talks
fucking
between different
peasants who are,
parties who are
the
more
conservative ones or whatever.
socially progressive. Has he
Tides of
indicated that he's going to change some of that, or what's the deal there?
I think it's quite an interesting issue. Yeah, I think he does have like what those of us here would call sort of socially conservative positions. He's not in favor of legalizing abortion. Like, I think he said that the issue of like gay marriage would be left to the Constituent Assembly, but it's not something he would push. But for me now that I live in Latin America, it's not socially conservative for Latin America. The whole of Latin America is socially conservative. His views are like the mainstream, really.
Right.
You can get a lot more socially conservative.
Yeah.
You can get people who are much, much, much further to the right. And it is how most people think. It is how, especially in working class areas, rural areas, people feel, the large majority of people very focused on the issue of poverty, very focused on the issues like national sovereignty and development, economic development. But people don't, there hasn't been ever really a great deal of discussion about issues of identity, social issues, stuff like this. It's seen as quite alien. And when the only people who talk about it are these sort of like sort of snobbish people and middle class people in the cities, then the reaction gets more intense. Oh, this is just concerns of like these I don't know, avant-garde middle class like city people. There's nothing to do with that. That's how most people think. Just here in Bolivia, where a few months ago I was interviewing a female union leader in this region of Cochabamba, and she is, we talked for a long time, and she's really an impressive woman, and like she was talking about her fight as well against sexism within the union, how she had to fight to become a leader and stuff. Just really great stuff. And then I asked her about abortion. She said, "Oh no, I'm a Catholic. All my family's Catholic. We're socialists, we're revolutionaries, but we're also Christians. And no, I don't agree with abortion."
Every baby unborn is a potential revolutionary. They'll lock you away if you say that, but it's
interesting. True. Well, yeah, there's like, as you said, that sounds like there's certainly people who are way to the right of Castillo on everything. And one of them is Kiko Fujimori, right? And some of our listeners are probably thinking, Fujimori, that doesn't sound like a Peruvian name, but this is a whole family that goes way back. They've done some pretty nasty stuff. Who are the four Fujimoris? What is Fujimorismo, as it's called?
Yeah, so you're right. It's not a Peruvian name. It's a Japanese name. They're from Japan. Her father is Alberto Fujimori, who was a dictator in the 1990s. He was elected in 1990, but then 2 years in, he did what's called a self-coup, where he told the military, invited the military to carry out a coup against Congress, basically, to close down all opposition so that he and the military could rule unopposed. And that went on for about 8 years. And yeah, it was a dictatorship, there's thousands of people were jailed, many disappeared, so lots of massacres. And there was a case that's actually going through the courts now of how hundreds of thousands of indigenous women were sterilized without without them knowing about it till years later when they realized that they could give birth. And this were like entire regions that this was applied to. And incidentally, that's actually something that feeds into the sort of anti-abortion sentiment, especially in rural areas. It's actually something that was forced onto people without their permission, without their consent. And that period of the dictatorship wasn't just about political repression. It was also about introducing the free market reforms, right? Privatizations, to create the economic model that Peru has today, which is pure neoliberalism, enormous inequality. I mean, when I used to live in Peru for a couple of years ago, and there I met people, large numbers of people who were like way richer than anyone I've met in the UK. But then we go out to the edges of the city, like 30 to 40% of the city has no access to water at all. Has to buy water from lorries in these tankers. You fill up your bucket, and that's all you can get. And you pay double for that to what the rich people with running water in their homes pay. Have it, flow freely. So these are the kinds of like enormous inequalities that exist in Peru, and that was a result of that era. And the constitution was written in that time as well under Alberto Fujimori. And Keiko Fujimori, she is his daughter, but she was the first lady at the time. During
you
that,
can do that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know you could, but yeah.
Is this a Chinatown situation, or?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to his wife. I mean, I don't know if she like died or like left him or something, but yeah, she wasn't around. So his daughter was the first lady. And so yeah, she was in government before she was in politics, so to speak. Okay. So so she's just sort of continued from there. She's been running for president like every election since then, basically, and always gets like quite a lot of votes, but not enough to actually win. So yeah, she's hoping this time will be different. I mean, I remember the first poll that came out when the second round started had within the city of Lima had Castillo 30%, Keiko Fujimori 30%, and 30% undecided. And these are like liberal sort of middle class people who, they're not leftist, but they don't like her like right wing populism, right? I mean, you get that, in North America, these like people who really hate Trump, but they're like, right, terrible Democrats or something. Those sorts of people. And so I was thinking, well, it'd be interesting to see where they're going to fall when it comes to election day. I think I have a pretty good idea, but let's wait and see. Mm-hmm. And now the polls show Pedro Castillo in Lima, 32%, Keiko Fujimori, 67%. Mm-hmm. So all of these sorts of like liberal undecideds have like swung to this sort of far right candidate so as to stop the left.
Yeah,
that's
which is
comforting.
100% what would have happened if like Bernie had gotten the nomination here in the U.S. All these people who are like Trump is a Nazi would vote for him in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it sounds like the polls are very close, but at the same time, a lot of the rural areas are kind of undercounted, right, in the polls. So are people like confident in Castillo's chances? And if he does win, sounds like it's going to be very, very, there's a lot of difficult circumstances in Peru, right? There's been decades of austerity, so the economy's in trouble, and also COVID has hit really hard. So can he win? And if he does win, can he like actually succeed in improving people's quality of life there?
I have a follow-up question about that, which is just like, are people afraid at all of having like an openly communist president-elect under the United States after everything we were doing 50 years ago? Like that was kind of like a death, like a target on your back for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll start with the polls, and yeah, I think that's interesting. The poll, like the last poll that's been carried out before the polling closed, was showed Castillo 51%, Keiko Fujimori 48%. So that's basically within like the margin of error statistically, right? However, I think, and maybe I'm completely wrong about this, I think that his support is being underestimated. Mm-hmm. And I'm only saying that based on my experience here in Bolivia, right. Because in Bolivia, the demographic of the people who support the movement towards socialism, Evo Morales' party, is exactly the same as the people supporting Castillo. As like 70% of them are rural people, 30% are sort of urban people. So that has that sort of demographic profile. And what happened here was when there was the elections last year, the polls underestimated.
Your mic might have gone out. You got really quiet all of a sudden. Sorry.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Do you mind turning it up just a little bit?
It's possible.
I don't know how to do that through me.
It's a headset. I think you just have to bring it closer up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But anyway, so what happened here in Bolivia was that the polls underestimated support for the MAS by 10%. 10%, and that was because the vast majority of the votes for the MAS was in the rural areas, and the pollsters, and like the country, like Peru and Bolivia is the same, they're like massive countries, but with not that much population, basically. So like they're the size of like many countries of continental Europe put together, but with like the population of one city, one European city. So it creates this, so you have people like living in the Amazon, in like really high mountainous areas, difficult to get to, often without roads, often without much signal, so you can't really call necessarily. So the pollsters don't really get to them, or if they do, it'd be really expensive to do so. I mean, maybe the ones in Bolivia are just like really terrible, and maybe in Peru they're better. But my guess is that some of the same dynamics are going to play out, and I think his support is being underestimated a little bit, precisely because of that urban-rural divide. But yeah, I mean, like there has been an enormous sort of scare campaign in the media about, what's going to happen if Castillo wins. So one of his policies, he says, and it's not even really a policy, it's just a sort of like proposal, I guess, is that he wants to reduce the country's reliance on imports and like produce more within the country, promote sort of local industry. And so all in the newspaper said, he's going to ban imports. You're not going to be able to buy iPhones. You're not going to be able to buy like clothes from the US. It's going to be like horrible. You're going to live like in misery without like Nutella and I don't know, like whatever people consume in Canada, etc. And another one I saw, a quite funny one I saw a few weeks ago, was a newspaper, because there's current inflation in Peru going on now under the neoliberal model, and the price of chicken has gone up. And they said that's the fault of Pedro Castillo because he's got so much support. Like investors are getting scared, and now that's why like the price of chicken's going up. So, and the title was that Castillo's already making us poor. Is already making you poorer. When he takes power, he's going to turn you into Venezuela, and no one's going to have any food. But it's already happening now. He's already like he's responsible for this rise in the price of chicken that's going on now.
You went on Reddit and did the GameStop short to the chickens.
Yeah,
I know what he's doing.
There's a lot to work with pun-wise when chickens are unavailable. The economy's flown the coop.
There you go.
There's a fox in the hen house. These are all just options I'm just giving out for free.
These economists are chicken shit.
Yeah, but Trump was doing the same thing at the end of the last election, which was taking the riots that were happening under his government and saying, look what will happen if we change government. So this is like a go-to move here.
Yeah, it's pretty smart.
That's a good comparison, I think. The failings of the current system have been portrayed as his fault somehow. Those are the sorts of like scare campaigns that have been going on across the whole of the media. There's no media no section of the national media that is sympathetic to Pedro Castillo. And the way he's managed to do it is through various sorts of local community media that people have in rural areas, social media. I mean, the kind of like interactions he gets on Facebook are just crazy. Like, I don't think I've ever seen stuff like it, because in Peru and Bolivia, people still like only use Facebook, especially like working class people. Like, people don't really use Twitter or Instagram and stuff. Like, people love Facebook, so everyone's on Facebook. And like, he can post a video, gets like 9, 10, 11,000 shares within like 1 hour and stuff.
Wow.
It's like, blimey, like, I've never seen that sort of levels of interaction.
Careful, or Zuckerberg will hear about that and suppress it.
I can imagine so. Yeah.
But if he gets in power, like, to Alex's question, is like, are people worried that when you say like they're saying we're going to end up like Venezuela, could that happen in terms of the U.S. just levying a shitload of sanctions and the bourgeoisie there like manufacturing food shortages and also how is he going to deal with these crises? Is there hope that he'll actually be able to transform things, or is it going to be pretty dim no matter what?
Well, yeah, certainly, because Peru shares a border with Bolivia, and a lot of the people that are going to be voting for Pedro Castillo, especially in the Andean rural areas, they're really close to Bolivia, and they look over the border, what's happening, and that's what has driven a lot of the support behind Pedro Castillo. I mean, I've spoken to some Peruvians who said that Evo Morales is our leader. We feel we identify more with him than we do with the sorts of Japanese or like European sounding names that are like in the presidency of our own country. So people look to what's going on in Bolivia as an example of how you can reduce poverty, deliver a growing economy, right. In the framework of sovereignty and kicking out US influence in the country.
I wanted to ask about Bolivia next. Are you there right now?
Yeah,
because I'm on your Twitter here. It looks like you're covering Luis Arces. Am I saying that right?
I was there yesterday.
Yeah. You got this video where he's trying to go to his car, and there's like a mob of fans, like it's a Rolling Stones concert. And they're like blockading him, which is weird for a president, kind of. I don't know.
Well, I should add that in the video you can see some security guards, but they're not from him. Those security guards are like the young members of the union of the town where he was speaking. So like union protection.
Cool. Interesting.
He only had like one security guard, I think.
So Mas, his party, is back in power after a short respite. They took a vacation, little break, hiatus, during which time Áñez, of course, was in power, and she's now in jail, right? How is her trial going? Is she
still in that little box that everyone is tweeting the picture of on Twitter?
Yes. So the day that her arrest was ordered, police went to her flat in the city where she lives, and she wasn't there. Like, oh God, she's done a runner. And the city she lives in is very close to the border of Brazil. So everyone's thinking, she must have gone to Brazil, like paid someone to take her over the border, something like that. Who knows? So they started a search of the city, and then they found her at her friend's house. She didn't make it to Brazil. At her friend's house, and she was hiding under, those beds that you can lift up and have storage space underneath.
She was hiding inside of an IKEA bed.
Yeah. And she had like stuff in there. She had like a blanket. She had some like bottles of water. So I don't know how long she was planning to stay in there. Bizarre.
Yeah, holy shit.
I'm picturing like a very comfy version of the video where they get Saddam Hussein out of that hole.
Yeah.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
Bed's definitely better than the Saddam Hussein hole.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Every time, pick the bed if you can.
But no, she's in jail now. She's in jail. I mean, there was these sorts of like attempts to have free Áñez campaigns and stuff. and I think that lost steam pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think most of it was probably here from like the New York Times.
Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
Free Britney.
She's a great lady.
I mean, a lot of listeners want to know if she's single, but I'll leave that for the blogs to figure out.
A lot of listeners.
No, she's married to a Colombian sort of narco-linked politician.
Okay, that sounds dangerous.
I mean, maybe he'll want, someone to take her out, like on a date, Pulp Fiction style or something. You never know.
She's married to someone. You've all seen the film, how it ends. Look it away.
Anders, you have to let it go. You're never going to get with Agnes.
I'm just saying, like, if someone needs to if Moss needs to do like a recon mission and they need someone to seduce her, I'm willing to do it.
The honeypot, sure, yeah.
Do we know any trained clowns?
But she was only in power for a little bit. Like, how much damage did she do, and how is Moss recovering things? It seems like the return has gone sort of smoothly overall. But you mentioned the IMF. Like, how is the relationship with that sort of international development going? Like, are they able to sort of restabilize things and get anti-poverty programs back on track?
So I have a question to piggyback onto this. How does the Biden...
we like adding like 9 questions at once and rapid firing.
The ADD, and I'm going to forget it. How does the Biden administration play into this? Because I know that he was, talking to Americans and saying, "I'm the most left-wing president of all time," and all this stuff. And then if you looked into what they were planning in like South America, it was very much not okay.
Yeah, definitely.
No honeypots planned.
And some of the worst damage that was done was in the economy, because when Evo Morales, the day he leaves power, Bolivia at that moment is the fastest growing economy in South America, and then within like 2 months that has been destroyed. And this is before the pandemic, right? And one of the big things she did was that Bolivia has loads of like state companies, like a large number of companies that are owned by the state, all sorts of different things. So, I mean, just right near here, there's like a juice factory that's owned by the state. They like buy fruits from the local people and just like make it into like juice pulps and stuff. And like the profits from that then go to the state, and then the state can invest it in like certain things. And so that's a small scale. The bigger scale is things like lithium, natural gas, things like that. And in fact, another factory there was here, huge factory to make ammonium fertilizers. And the plan was to export it around the world, and all the profits going to the state. All of that was closed down. The factory gates just closed the day after the coup, as part of their sort of plan, to shrink the size of the state, free market reforms, etc. And that did enormous damage. I mean, in the city Cochabamba near to here, they had actually built, under Evo Morales' government, they'd nearly finished building a metro system. And in the city, it's terrible at the moment. You have like buses from like the 1950s that are like always breaking down, and like sometimes catch fire, and like it's terrible. And so the government was building this sort of modern metro system, and it was already, all the stops were done, all the tracks were there, like in public. The only thing they had to like finish building the carriages, and basically the Agnes government just cut all funding for that, and it just disappeared. But all the tracks and the stops are all still there. People could see it on the daily, on the day-to-day. But the whole project just went up in smoke because of, the retreat of the state from the economy.
Yeah.
So the process now is reactivating all of that stuff, reopening all of those like state factories, state projects. Just yesterday, when I was with Luke Savitzer, he was opening a new market that had been built by the government for the people of this town. And it's just really important because most people work in like selling food, selling, stuff, and they used to have to do it in the streets where you're vulnerable to rains, the sun, etc. So building this market is an infrastructure project, and it begun under Evo and then paralyzed under Agnes, and they say, no, we've completed this now, and we're going to finish all of those projects that Evo had started. So that's the sort of economic strategy in Bolivia. Is state-led economic growth, state companies that can turn a profit and can bring revenues for the state, and then that can be used for schools, education, health, whatever, social spending. So yeah, that's what's happening. We're in the process of reactivating all of that stuff. It's like every week it seems that a new one of these sort of state projects is being restarted. So that's really positive. But yeah, in terms of Biden, that's a lot less positive because I don't follow domestic US politics particularly closely. But I mean, I hear some people saying, "Oh, he's doing all this like progressive stuff," but on the issue of Latin America, there's been complete continuity from what the Trump administration did. And you got to remember that the Trump administration was a radicalization compared to what Obama had, because Obama had played the same role in Latin America. But Obama was making some small positive steps, like easing the blockade on Cuba, what were, lighter economic sanctions on Venezuela under Obama became a total embargo blockade under Trump. So he pushed things much more aggressively than Obama did, or than Obama and Biden, because Biden was in that government, right? Mm. But now that Biden's president, none of that has been, rolled back. All of the Trump approach in Latin America has been maintained. There's not a single case in which that is not the case. The issue of Venezuela, Cuba, support for right-wing governments like Colombia, all of that has been completely maintained from the Trump administration. So yeah, there's whatever change there may be domestically, there's total continuity on the issue of Latin American policy.
I mean, in Biden's defense, the one thing he is known to do is forget. So maybe that's what's happening. And he just, it's a whoopsie kind of situation. I guess what I wanted to consult you on here. So we got election coming up in Peru, looking pretty strong for Pedro Castillo. Maybe he's not going to win. Maybe he will. But, the tides are moving there. Mas is in power in Bolivia. Venezuela is still Venezuela. We got a left-wing government in Argentina. Cuba is still Cuba. Is there going to be any kind of Pan-Americanism that maybe takes off from this? Like some kind of new socialist internationalist party we can deal with? What's the opposite of OAS that we could get out of this?
Yeah, I think it's something Evo Morales himself is spending his time on at the moment, essentially, now that he's no longer president, is precisely rebuilding all of the old alliances, that some of which existed, some of which didn't exist before. And Evo's vision really is to have a sort of two-pronged strategy. One is to have forums of integrations for the governments. So there used to be UNASUR, which is the only Latin American integration body that didn't include Canada and the US. And that got destroyed basically by succession of governments, but the plan is to rebuild that. But what he's also proposing is a kind of UNASUR of the peoples, where social movements from different countries have an international forum in Latin America. And he's already held some meetings with that, including, from social movements in countries with right-wing governments, in countries like Peru, Colombia, etc. So yeah, that's a really interesting project that's going on, and I think it's to be done well. It's gonna have to be developed over a long period of time, I think. But I think there's so many different things going on in so many different countries, and I think Evo Morales is the person who can be the point to bring it all together. The Fidel's not around anymore, Chavez not around anymore, and Evo Morales is someone I think who started out in the labor union struggle, became president, brought about deep transformational change, and especially after the coup, the kind of affection I think people have for him at an international level, I think could be something that can be used to build something new internationally. Yeah.
And that's great that he's, now that he's one of the upsides of him not being the president anymore and having to run Bolivia domestically is that he has time to be an internationalist. But with the time we have left, I definitely want to squeeze in Chile to this conversation because it's some very interesting developments there for the left. they've had a constitution for a while that hasn't been so great for everybody in the country. They were able to vote out Pinochet in 1990, but he kept his constitution. So they've been under a dictator's constitution for the last 30 years.
They need the eraser.
So,
the bigger.
Yeah, right. But they do have some whiteout that they just approved a few months ago for a new constitution, and people were like, is it going to be that good if there's like centrists in power? But boom, we just had some elections over there. The left took out the center right, took out the center left, and now they have the opportunity to rewrite the Constitution. What kind of stuff should we expect in this new Constitution, and how can it change Chile and the region?
Yeah, I mean, Chile is another country which, since the 80s has been like a bastion of, being a pro-US ally, of having free market economy. And it's always used as an example that, this is what you can do. Chile is a country with a free market economy, has economic growth, things is a democracy, well, for the last 20 years or so at least, but it's a democracy. But the last year or so has proved that all of that narrative has been false in large part, because people in 2019 began mobilizing on a massive scale, massive protests that were often turned into riots around inequality, around the cost of living, around poverty. So all of that movement destroyed that myth that had been built up around Chile. And now that led into these elections, these constituent elections. And the only reason that happened was that was the demand of the movement to draw up a new constitution. And the whole of the right wing stood under a single list, and they got 30%. No, less than a third, about 25%, because with a third, they could have had the power to veto articles of the new constitution, but they didn't manage to get a third, so they won't be able to veto anything. So that's quite positive. And the largest list was a list headed up by the Communist Party of Chile. But they don't have a majority either. It's quite a chaotic situation, actually. You have all of these different kind of leftist groups, and I would say there is a left majority, but all different sorts. You have environmentalists, feminists, you even have animal rights people, and social democrats, liberals, communists, all celebrating the fact that they form a majority. But I think when they actually have to work together, it might be a bit more complicated. But it's enormously positive for a country that is so traditionally conservative, and that was a bastion for the US as a key ally. And now that was starting to come apart. And the guy who's first in the polls there, a guy called Daniel Hadoué, he's actually of Palestinian origin. There's a large Palestinian community in Chile, actually. And he's from the Communist Party. He's already a mayor in the capital city. They have a few different mayors in the capital city, and he's one of them. And for the city center of Santiago, the capital city, they just elected their new mayor, who's a 30-year-old economist, and she's also a member of the Communist Party. So, you've got really high-profile people now in really key roles in Chile. So that's going to be interesting how it plays out. So we see this process with Chile, Peru, Colombia, key stable US allies, and now suddenly they're in these massive crises.
Yeah. And what kind of go ahead?
I was just going to say it's always tough navigating between the environmentalist bloc and the animal rights bloc in any given joint government.
I mean,
they do not get along.
If there's anyone who can screw that up, it's this is great, but the left, we also not always the best with infighting. Although maybe Chile's more less sectarian than here.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't get this political animal rights thing. I mean, like I think everyone supports. No one wants cruelty to animals, right? But like the way people can build like whole political causes out of it, I think is absurd. I mean, when I was in Colombia once, I went there just after local elections, and Colombia is like such a messed up country. And the election poster I saw the most of was the Animalist Party, and their symbol was like a dog's paw. I'm like, oh, you're in Colombia, like the narco state, and you're like talking about dogs or something. Like,
This country's gone to the dogs.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe for that reason. Yeah.
Well, are they like asking for equal representation in government for dogs, or
let's just say it. It's for furries, right?
it's
people
for
that dress up as furries.
Insane clown policy style furries.
They're gonna run for mayor as a furry. I get it.
Yeah, because I know there's an issue in Chile and they have gender parity rules in parliament, and usually it's to balance out because they elect too many men, but this time they elected too many ladies, and so some of the women are being asked to step down and give the seats to men.
Oh, yeah.
It's like opposite club rules.
Yeah. But so that sounds encouraging. Like, what kind of constitution is this going to be? Is it going to be like completely different relationship to like private property, or like what's like the best case scenario for the left for some of these amendments?
It's going to be a long process, and it's going to be quite messy, I imagine, as these different groups negotiate. But I think a lot of people will look to, because this was something that Bolivia did when Evo first won in 2006. You had the Constituent Assembly, made a new constitution, and like the most important parts of that was, recognition of indigenous nations in the country, and also there's a key article saying that the natural resources of the country belong to the people, and there is privatizing those natural resources is an unconstitutional act. It'd be a crime. And other sorts of issues like, if you're going to take out loans with institutions like the IMF, it has to have approval of the legislature and stuff, so as to stop, presidents doing it on a whim. And all the sorts of social rights that didn't exist before and that now do. But that question of natural resources belonging to the public, and a constitutional article against privatizing that I think would be something really important to propose in that process in Chile.
Great, cool. Well, is this last question? Is this the resurgence of the pink tide? Do we have is it a new color? Is it a continuation? What tide is this?
What name are we putting on the shirts?
Well, I'm gonna be boring and say I don't think there are tides. I think every country has sort of permanent struggles, and at certain points, due to the unity, good organization of those people, they're able to win, and in some places they're not able to win. And so I think with the pandemic, when you had lockdowns imposed and stuff, that completely destroyed the economies here in Latin America. No government has the sorts of resources to pay people, subsidies or payments to be at home. Basically, that didn't exist. So when they imposed lockdowns, people were just sitting at home, not able to work, and without any income. A lot of people went through really serious hardships. So I think that's been something that's triggered this new resurgence in a lot of different countries.
Raices. That was like Slavoj Žižek impression.
Right. We'll have him on soon.
Yeah.
Well, Ollie, thank you so much for your time. Where can our listeners find you in the future?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Check out our website. We have a website now as of about a month ago, calsachonews.com. News and analysis about Latin America in English. So head there. We're on social media as well, Calsacho News on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Patreon as well. So definitely check that out. I think we're some of the only people doing sort of on the ground stuff about Latin America in English that isn't like terrible Guardian or like New York Times correspondent. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah. And it's to the point. It's like, you get it's not one of these long winding 100-page essays. It's like, this is what you need to know. It's a great site.
That's the idea, it's like why, especially when there was the coup in Bolivia. I mean, obviously Bolivia is very important to me because, my family's Bolivian, but, why should it be important to other people in other countries? It's very small.
Yeah.
Bolivia is very small. Most people haven't heard of it. What I was trying to communicate was, communicate it in a succinct way and in ways that I think people have a lot to learn from Bolivia. And I was trying to communicate those things and, provoke people to think about some of the issues that Bolivia brings up and how that relates to their own situations, their own countries. And I think that can be true of every country in that area.
Right on. Cool.
No, thank you guys.
Yeah.
All right. See you later. Nice meeting you.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to plug. Let me think.
Okay, let's do plugs, everyone. Alex, you got anything?
Yes. Theater of Delight Season 3 is coming out soon. So keep your eye on your phone for the latest hit series of audio drama by me and my friend Max Ogle. Other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at my new handle, Patak Test Kitchen, which is similar to the other handle, but it has more flavors. And I think you're going to find that when you go and slam that follow button, Jake.
All right, Alex.
We're no longer doing movie of the week. We're done with it.
No,
I mean, the movie of the year is Cruella. So that takes up all of our movies of the week for the next.
2021 is done.
Movie of a generation, possibly.
Really?
Somebody on the Patreon said that they were happy that you, Anders, got to have the same experience that I had with the movie Solo, which I think is probably accurate.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you're listening to this episode, we just reviewed Cruella on our Patreon at length.
Right.
In exhausting detail.
Yeah.
Subscribe to that if you don't want to see it and you want to hear commentary about it.
Yeah, you want to hear Anders defend this movie for like 100 minutes against an all-out attack from everyone else.
Right.
No, I switched sides. I'm a traitor. I thought it
truly was my Alamo. At Anders Lee here on Twitter, Dursley on Instagram. Check out my other job, Redacted Tonight, on YouTube and portable.tv. And also, if you are really anywhere in America or the world, but especially Northern Virginia in the DC area, please check out charisma4virginia.com and help out, right? There's the election is on Tuesday, June 8th, and they need phone bankers. If you can be there in person, they need door knockers, GOTV people, and they could probably use some donations, TBH. So do that. Again, Charisma, KARISHMA, for Virginia.com.
I have my other podcast, Why You Mad? You probably know about it. We have merch for sale at poddamnamerica.bigcartel.com. Link in the show notes. Sign up for our Patreon if you want to hear us talk about Cruella, and talk to us on Discord. And that's it. That's all I got. Okay. It's
finished
for us.
It's Moss.
It's finito, as they say.
Liv Moss. I was
Liv
trying
Moss.
so hard not to make a Liv Moss joke. Okay. All right. Well,
I'm stopping.